The grey stallion came over the hedge into the top meadow with an empty saddle and his reins broken, and the Duke of Deverstone was off his own horse and running before he had finished thinking the word. He came through the gap expecting the worst thing he had ever seen in his life, and found instead a young woman lying flat on her back in the wet June grass with her arms flung out, laughing at the sky. Caspar stopped so abruptly that he skidded. She was laughing the way people laugh when they have not decided to. It kept surprising her and starting again. Her hair had come entirely down. There was a green smear of grass from her shoulder to her hip. One boot had lost its lace, and she was making no attempt whatever to get up. "Madam," he said. "Do not," she gasped, "say anything sensible for a moment. I have not got my wind back, and I shall not be able to answer properly. You have been thrown." "I have been thrown a great deal better than that," she said. "By worse horses than that, over harder ground than this." She wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist and squinted up at him against the sun. "Is he over the hedge? Tell me he did not go into the lane. Your neck may be broken." "It is not. You cannot possibly know that. I can actually. It is the sort of thing one is quite clear about." And she began laughing again, and this time Caspar heard the crack in it, the shake underneath, and understood that she had been frightened after all, and had simply chosen the other end of the same feeling, and something in his chest turned over and did not turn back. He was aware, standing there in a hayfield at 8 in the morning with his hat somewhere behind him in the hedge, that he had just fallen in love with a woman whose name he did not know, before he had so much as helped her up. It was an absurd, undignified, entirely inconvenient piece of information, and he received it the way a man receives news of a death or a fortune. Standing very still and saying nothing at all about it, he put out his hand. She did not take it. She rolled onto one elbow, got herself up in stages like a person checking a fence for gaps, stood, said, "There, you see," and then her left ankle folded quietly under her, and Caspar caught by both arms. "Ah," she said, into his cravat. "Yes." He set her on the gate. She sat there with her ruined boots swinging and her hair round her shoulders and looked at him properly for the first time, and he watched her work out who he was, and waited with real interest to see what she would do about it. What she did was say, "Your Grace, that horse is not vicious. He has just put you over a hedge. He put himself over a hedge, and I failed to go with him," which is a different sentence with a different subject. She pushed her hair back. "He is not vicious. He is bored to the bone. He has been shut in a loose box for 4 days at a time, and he is frightened of a whip, which no honest horse ever is unless somebody has taught him to be. Somebody has been teaching him both, and you have been signing the wages." Caspar considered her. "Who are you?" "Jessamine Locke." The name went into him like a key into a lock he had forgotten was there. Locke. Old Ned Locke's daughter. "Old Ned Locke's daughter," she agreed, "who has been living in the horsemaster's cottage on your charity for 14 months, since my father died, and who has therefore no business whatever sitting on your gate telling you your business. I know. You have been riding my stallion." "Every morning since March," said Miss Locke, "at 5:30, before anybody is up." Caspar put his hands in his pockets. It seemed the safest place for them. "Mr. Prewitt," he said slowly, "informs me every Friday that he has Hazard going quietly in the long field." "Mr. Prewitt informs you of a great many things. Mr. Prewitt is my head groom." "Mr. Prewitt," said Jessamine Locke, with the first real heat she had shown, "has not sat on that horse since Candlemas, when Hazard put him into the muck heap in front of 3 men. And Mr. Prewitt has been getting his own back with a whip in the dark of the box ever since, which is why the animal goes at a hedge like the devil is behind him. He is behind him. He is 5'6" and wears a brown coat." She stopped and colour came up her throat. "I beg your pardon. I have wanted to say that to somebody for 4 months, and I have just said it to the worst possible person." "On the contrary," said Caspar, "you have said it to the only person who can do anything about it." He walked her back to the stable yard because she could not walk it herself, and because she refused absolutely to be carried, and so the compromise was that she leaned on his arm the whole 3/4 of a mile and abused his stable management the entire way. He learned a great deal in that 3/4 of a mile. that his farrier was good and his corn merchant was robbing him, that the drains under the East Range had wanted seeing to since her father's time, that the grey stallion had cost him 900 guineas and was worth every penny, and would be worth nothing at all in a year if he went on as he was going. You have opinions, Miss Locke. I have my father's opinions. I have had nobody to give them to since he died, and they have been going bad in the cellar. In the yard Mr. Pruitt came out wiping his hands and began, before he had properly looked up, on a fluent account of how the young lady had no business near that animal and had been warned off it twice. Caspar let him get all the way to the end. Then he said, "You will be gone by Saturday, and I will give you a character that says what you were good at and nothing else, which is more than you have earned." And he turned his back before the man's face had finished changing, because he did not particularly wish to watch it. Jessamine Locke, sitting on the mounting block with her boot off and her ankle swelling, looked up at him with an expression he could not read at all. "That was quick," she said. "It was 14 months late," said Caspar. "Which is a thing I intend to say about several matters before the summer is out." The county heard about it by Thursday, and by Friday 3 separate people had written to say that a horse which puts a woman over a hedge must be shot. Sir Hulbert Nyme rode over in person to say it slowly, being a magistrate and fond of the sound. "There is no help for it, Deverstone. He'll kill somebody. Better a ball behind the ear on a Tuesday than a coroner in the spring." Miss Locke is of another opinion. "Miss Locke," said Sir Hulbert, "is a groom's daughter with a turned ankle. Miss Locke is the only person on this estate who has told me the truth since Candlemas," said Caspar pleasantly, "and I am keeping her, and I am keeping the horse. Do have some more of the seed cake, it is very good." So Hazard lived, and the business of making him fit to live at 5:30 the next morning, and Caspar was there in an old coat, in the wet. He had not meant to make a habit of it. He made a habit of it. She would not let him do anything for the first week, but stand at the rail and be quiet, which he discovered was a discipline he had never once been asked to practice. On the 9th morning she let him hold the rope. On the 14th she let him walk the horse himself, and told him in front of 2 stable lads that his hands were heavy and his temper was worse than the horse's, and the lads went scarlet and Caspar laughed until he had to lean on the fence. He learned that she talked to the animal in a low-running murmur about nothing at all, the weather, the price of oats, the state of her own boots, and that the grey ears came round to her voice like iron to a magnet. He learned that she had been 16 when her mother died and 19 when her father did, that she could set a splint and read a pedigree and could not, by her own account, sew a straight seam to save her life. He learned that she took the ruined ends of the loaves down to the almshouse on Sundays and did not think this worth mentioning, and he only found it out because the almswoman mentioned it for her, and he learned, one grey morning in the 3rd week of it, standing in a paddock with rain coming down the back of his neck, that a 900-guinea stallion who had gone at every hedge in the parish like a hunted thing would stand loose in the middle of a field with his head down and his eyes soft, while a woman in a mended jacket leaned against his shoulder and told him he was a great ridiculous fool. Caspar watched that, and thought with perfect calm that he was not going to recover from this, and did not want to. They were seen, of course. It happened on a Tuesday at 6:20 in the morning, when his aunt Lady Ferro and 2 of her guests came home from the Nime ball by the long way, because the ford was up, and the carriage came round the paddock corner, and there they were. The Duke of Deverstone bareheaded in his shirt-sleeves with his coat round, Miss Jessamine Locke's shoulders, and Miss Locke's hair in a plait down her back, and the 2 of them laughing at something in a manner which no arrangement of words was ever going to explain away. Lady Ferro came to the library at 11. "The girl must go," she said. "Today. To a cousin to the sea, to Northumberland, I do not care. By Sunday it will be in every drawing-room from here to the coast. It will." Caspar agreed. "Well then." "Or," he said, "I might marry her." His aunt sat down. He had it all arranged in his head by dinner, which was a mistake, because he had not consulted the only person whose opinion signified, and when he went down to the paddock and put the thing to Miss Locke in his best plain manner, the licence, the settlement, the protection of his name, she heard him out to the end with her arms folded on the top rail. Then she said, "No, no." She was not laughing now. "I have been 14 months on this estate as charity, your grace, and I have got used to it, and I am not going to spend the next 40 years as a rescue. You cannot marry me because a carriage came round a corner. I will not have you shackled for a wet morning, and I will not be a thing you did once, kindly, and were praised for. And if it is not kindness?" "Then," said Jessamine Locke, "you had better go about proving it, because so far you have made me an offer that would suit a lawyer very well, and has not one word in it that is any use to me at all." So he courted her, which the county found even more shocking than the alternative and enjoyed a great deal more. He sent flowers, which she said were the wrong ones and would give the horses colic if the boy went on cutting through the paddock with them. He wrote her verses. She returned them with the scansion corrected in pencil and one line marked true, which he cut out with a penknife and kept in his pocketbook. He took her to church in the Deverstone pew with his aunt on her other side, and Lady Ferro, who had come armed with 40 years of disapproval, was disarmed within a month by the simple stratagem of being asked her opinion about something and then listened to. He came down to the paddock at 5:30 for 11 weeks together, and did as he was told and held the rope. On the last morning in September, with the mist lying white along the bottom of the meadow and Hazard grazing loose behind them, Caspar stopped in the middle of the field and said her name, and she turned round with her hands full of head collar. "I have been trying," he said, "to find a way of saying this which is not a rescue, and I cannot, because I have been rescued and it is the wrong way round. I was 39 years old, and I owned 4,000 acres, and I had not laughed out loud since my father died. Then a horse came over a hedge without you." He took a breath. "I did not fall in love with you in the paddock, Jessamine. I fell in love with you lying in the wet grass laughing at the sky, before I had so much as put my hand out, and everything since has only been me catching up with the fact. Marry me, not for the carriage, not for my aunt, because I should like to be told my hands are heavy every morning for the rest of my life." Jessamine Locke dropped the head collar in the grass. "Yes," she said. They were married in October in the little church at Deverstone, and she came out of it on his arm past a churchyard full of grooms and almswomen and stable lads, all of whom had known perfectly well what was going to happen since June. Hazard lived to be 26 and never went at another hedge as though something were behind him. He carried the Duchess of Deverstone until his knees gave out, and was then turned into the top meadow with instructions to do nothing whatever for the remainder of his life, which he did extremely well, and Caspar kept a habit that his household never entirely stopped remarking upon. That whenever his wife came into a room laughing, the Duke of Deverstone would put down his pen and look up every single time, like a man who had heard the sound once in a hayfield and had never got over the luck of it.